to record.
I wasn't looking at you. The corner of my eye, I see your little nubby finger.
That's right.
Pointing at me.
That's right.
That's how we know. All right. It's going to be a great conversation. We've got Eric with us. Eric, if you would just give us your name, who you're with, and what you do.
All right. My name is Eric Glaves. I am a land surveyor licensed in Washington State. I work for Dave Evans and Associates. I work with you, even though we've never met before.
Yes. We both know the DEA difference, by the way.
Oh, and do you have the 6 ways that DEA is different memorized?
How do you know there's 6? Have you been doing your research?
Maybe.
Ah,
I couldn't recite them.
Well, no, it's because they're a sponsor of the show. It's my
there you
job
go.
to
There you
know.
go. Well said. Well said.
So,
Super cool. Eric, thanks for being here. This is great.
well,
To
thanks
have
for
a
having me on.
fellow DEA here. It's really, really cool. I think it's just you and I here from David Evans, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Sean Delphet said, make sure you talk to Eric. I'm like, well, as a matter of fact, we're going to be interviewing. So
Great.
perfect. Perfect. So you're here to tell us about a really cool project that you worked on at David Evans. And my understanding is it's the Ballard locks.
It's the Ballard locks. I mean, the technical name is the Hiram M. Chittenden locks, but that's a mouthful for anyone to say. So most
Okay.
people in Seattle, if you talk to a Seattleite, they're just going to know it as the Ballard locks.
And what was this project? What were you doing?
This project was actually it came out of I believe it was one of our state representatives that was looking at all the funding that was going for different projects across the country and basically said we're not getting anything here in Washington State. And the reason was there wasn't a whole lot of actual shipping traffic coming through the Ballard locks, although it services 50,000 vessels per year. A lot of pleasure craft, a lot of random boats coming through there, but it's not monetarily, the dollar figure is not high enough to warrant replacement. So there was a big push to help out and renovate the locks, and they got the money. And so they replaced basically the center gate. There's 2 locks at the Ballard locks. There's a big one and a small one. And the large one is 800 feet long, I believe. And there's a center gate in there. Original gates from 1912. And they needed to replace them.
Wow.
They weighed about 250,000 pounds each. So they called in a heavy marine construction firm, which was our client for this project. The Army Corps of Engineers was basically spearheading this. And we provided survey services for 3 years for about 2 weeks each year. And I call it my 190 over 80 is my high blood pressure 2 weeks out of the year because it was a very high pressure project.
Yeah. What made it a high pressure project?
First of all, was the precision required. They were looking for some very, very tight tolerances there. We actually explored the possibility of bringing in a laser tracker for this because they were throwing around numbers like 1/32 of an inch, 1/64 of an inch to start.
Yeah.
We ended up taking that off the table and we basically stretched our gear tolerances to what I would consider their max.
Sure.
So
I mean, and isn't that a tight tolerance for a marine application, like a marine construction? Like that seems.
it is very much so. And I've dealt with dams before, bridges, structures, that sort of thing, but never locks. It's the first project I've ever done that was an actual locks project. So it was a lot of fun. It was very interesting, but again, very high pressure. So
And locks move.
they do.
The other things you said aren't supposed to move, so it seems like.
Right. And the entirety of the project, they had to work around the closure that they do every single year. Basically, if you go down in there and you look, you're gonna see just barnacles everywhere, right? They have volunteers that actually go down and scrape the barnacles off during this closure session. And that's when the Corps goes in there and they look and inspect everything there. So you go down in there and you look at the gates and we're like, we're going to be laser scanning these things. There's particles everywhere, but it helped them out with their design. So that was part of the reality capture piece, was laser scanning the gates in place, as well as the equipment rooms on either side.
Yeah. What was the strategy for setting control for a project like that?
I don't want to use the word Hail Mary, but we didn't know exactly how it was going to go. We had a plan to set basically a line of 6 points on either side on the top. We talked about going down and setting points in the bottom, but of course we raised the question like, hey, they're scraping this thing.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, we didn't know if that control would survive. So we ended up resecting from the top. We're talking about looking upwards, I think, or zenith angle was something like 30 degrees or something. We're very, very, very high angle of inclination there. So we set control on the top and we ended up actually shooting through where the hydraulic arms that control the gates. We had a little window you could see through into the control rooms, which are below ground level on either side. So we closed the loop on both sides. And during this entire time, it was still open to the public. So that was actually one of the biggest challenges is they can't close it down. A lot of folks actually walk across the dam and the locks to get to work into Seattle that way. Ballard's very, very high traffic area there. So you have folks walking by on bikes, they got walking their dogs, you know, we're trying to move around with laser scanners, levels, total stations, had SX12s out there. It was tricky.
Wow. So talk about the different technologies. You kind of mentioned it there. So conventionally you set the control, and then what did you do? You brought in the laser scanners, and how did all that kind of, you know, come together?
We ended up using the XX12 for the majority of the scanning down in the chamber itself. We also had an X7 that we used that went into the equipment rooms, and then where the actual axis of the gate sits, the top piece where it turns swings on, it's called the anchorage. We have the 2 anchorage bars, which allow them to move the top of the gate, level it wherever they want to go. We used the X7 to scan that. And so we had targets out, and we used targets and cloud-to-cloud registration to tie the X7 scans to the SX12 scans. That's how we ended up actually working it. Everything was done in TBC.
So, and was this all updated like real time as you went?
It wasn't updated in real time, but we could at least see what we were getting because we have the X7 out there. You know, it's got perspective. You can see the scan data on there. And SX12, you're looking at access. You can see the scans in real time. So we just made sure we got good coverage. Yeah.
So how did you ensure that the data, like what was the quality control like? How, you know, what was the plan as far as making sure the data you were providing was, you know, legit?
Bottom line would be redundancy, and a lot of it. For the control work, we must have turned dozens of sets and broke setup multiple times to make sure that we locked down the control as much as possible. When it came to the features, because we had a laundry list of features they wanted us to tie in, where the anchorages are at the top of the gate, we had to tie very specific points that the Corps wanted to see. So we had scans, the data, and then we also had total station observations. And we had, I think, one point we had 2 S7s and 1 SX12, all 3 at the same time. We were tying the same points.
Oh, wow.
So lots of redundancy.
Yeah, and talk about like the safety component of it.
Safety, the nice thing about this project was safety was actually not as big of a concern, at least at the start. We weren't needing to get out on the edge very often, but when we did, they have a whole, it's a sliding tension system. So you harness up, and there's just basically a carabiner you clip into, and it's a slides up and down the length of the lock. So if you look at some of the pictures of it, you can see the Corps of engineer the workers out there. That's how they, in the heavy traffic times, they guide the ships through, and they're just attached. They're just running along with this little tether that moves with them on the top.
Yeah.
So, but fortunately, we were able to just walk down the scaffolding, which I'm an office guy, so, you know, I'm not used to walking up and down, you know, that much scaffolding with that much gear anymore. So we just walked up and down, and the equipment rooms were not confined spaces, so fortunately didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And you said you came back every 2 weeks for 3 years?
Actually, it was done, we did 2 weeks every year.
Okay.
It's about this time, actually. I remember last year we were kind of moving into the final phase. This is the 3rd year. So we did wrap it up actually in December of last year. About 2 weeks every year.
And then did you see, what did you see when you went back every year?
Oh, after the first year was just data collection. We got a ton of data for that. Second year, they yanked the gates. They actually floated in a barge in the locks, and they removed the gates using divers. This is Manson Construction, one of the oldest firms in Seattle. They were around actually before the locks were built. And they did an amazing job with pulling out these gates. So we came back, and they're just gone. So everything was exposed. One of the funny things about that is the base of the gate, where they sit on, it's called a pintle base. And if I sound like I know what I'm talking about, it's because when I got this project, I was sitting there reading up on my terminology because I had no idea what this stuff was.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a pintle base is what it sits on. It's basically like a half of a ball bearing. It's about, I don't know, 1.5 feet or so. And that was one of our very critical things we had to measure. So they yanked the gates, and we had to measure where the pintle base was. In theory, it should have been directly below where the center of that what they call a gudgeon pin. The gudgeon pin holds the gate in place.
Okay, that's the pin that it swings around.
That's right.
Okay.
So we went to measure the pintle base, and turns out I don't know if they knew this or not. We certainly didn't know it. It was a sliding model. So there's just a big metal plate, and it just slid around on that. That's where it was. So it pushed itself off the base when they yanked the gates. And so everyone's like, how do we measure this now? So I've been just basically doing an entire circle around it, because in theory it would have been centered on that base.
Right.
And we found out that when I generated the best fit center of that circle, it was about 1/8 of an inch different than the gudgeon pin at the top. 1912 engineers.
Wow. That is wild.
See, that's when engineers were engineers, Sean. Back in the day.
Is that a shot or?
So what were like 1 or 2 lessons learned on this project?
I think the big lesson for me was number one was logistics. Every year it was different. We didn't know exactly when they'd be ready for us to be out there. And we have phenomenal staff at DEA. Our field crews are second to none. But we had a couple of folks who were more familiar with the project. So we were trying to shift our schedules around to make sure that we got the right people out there to work on there. So that for me, that was a challenge.
Yeah.
The other thing I think was figuring out on the fly how to get the right measurements without being fooled by one of the things that we actually did find, we were cutting retro targets in half so you could put the actual center of the target directly on these forms that we were laying out. And one of the interesting things is when your EDM is half on, half off the reflective target, it will return a distance typically that's correct, but it'll float the vertical a little more.
Oh.
And so we were seeing things jump around a little bit more, and eventually, after doing some research and some testing, figured out that's what was going on there. But we were worried that we were not placing these inserts for the project. I mean, that was very, very, very high pressure for me, because I was having to make sure that there was nothing wrong with it.
Well, you mentioned the fact that it was a high pressure project many times. What did you learn about yourself personally working on a project like this?
I learned I should probably not stress out too much about the project, because I had a lot of sleepless nights, I think, in there too, when we were in the middle of doing something. It took several days to do these layouts. The layouts were just, I must have checked it 6, 7, 8, 10 times and had someone else check it too, which is good. You need to check things, but
Sure.
I think I definitely went a little overboard with that.
Yeah. Hey, you wanted to be sure?
You mentioned, using different types of equipment and, TBC and meshing it all together. Was that the plan going into it, or did you kind of adapt when you got out there to figure out how to collect all the data?
We actually did not know for sure. The plan was for me anyways. I wanted to try and do it all in TBC. Actually, the main reason was because our reality capture, our scanning team is, again, second to none, but they were busy with some other really large projects at the time, and I did not want to bug them. And because we were not modeling anything for this, because I cannot model, I don't know how to do it, never really learned. Sounds like it'd be really tedious for me. So I just wanted to give them the point cloud like they requested. So going in there, we had all Trimble gear, knowing that I can bring it into TBC, and it turned out that it was just fine. I had to lean on the team a little bit to just make sure I wasn't going about it the wrong way.
Okay.
But yeah, the intention was to get everything in TBC and just crank it all in there. So we did.
So did you have to get all the hardware calibrated and everything before you guys started the project?
We did. We had to make sure we got all our certificates up to speed, because that's specifically required by the contract. We made sure that we did our field calibration as well. We actually rented an SX12 for that one. And so I had to put it through its paces. I think the night before I was out in the yard and I was sitting there making sure that it was all looking good. My wife was like, "Come inside, please." I said, it's done, right? I'm like, I think it's calibrated. It's been a long time since I've run the calibration. So yeah, level had to be pegged, all of that.
All the stuff. Wow, what a really cool experience for you. I mean, professionally, that's one of those career defining projects, that you can always look back on and reference.
That was the joke. It was either going to be career defining or career
ending.
Yes. It was the thing that made me realize that's not the business for me.
Yeah. Hence all the sleepless nights.
Yeah.
Really good stuff, Eric. Is there anything else you want to get out there about the project in general before we let you go?
I'd just say if anybody's heading out to the Seattle area, if you're looking for places to visit, the Ballard Locks is an amazing place to see. Not only is it has the original historic grounds. Basically, it's this looks very similar to how it did when they originally built it. There's also a fish ladder there. It's pretty cool to see. You can walk across the dam, you can walk across the lock, you can walk across the gates themselves. There's a walkway out there. So when they're closed, you can just walk over them.
Oh,
there.
that's
So,
cool.
Yeah. So if you're ever in Seattle, it's a great place to visit, especially if you're kind of an engineering nerd.
Free plug, Seattle. Don't
Yeah.
get used to
Yeah. Right.
it. Well, thanks, Eric. Appreciate your time.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Yep, great
Enjoy
talking to you.
enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah. Thank you. You too.